The European Union has accused China of increasing cross-strait tensions by holding military drills around Taiwan. It called on all parties to exercise restraint. Taiwan has deployed its own navy in response to the drills, which some are calling a dress rehearsal for an invasion. China claims Taiwan as part of its territory and has not ruled out the use of force to take it over.
The Taiwanese military is keeping a close eye on Chinese warships in the Taiwan Strait. The Chinese People's Liberation Army, who released this footage, said its navy, army, air and rocket units are practicing for precision strikes and a blockade of the self-ruled island. Taiwan quickly responded, sending its own aircraft and ships to the 180-kilometre-long strait, where tensions have escalated since a more outspoken Taiwanese president took office in May 2024. His defence minister condemned the drills.
This morning, the Chinese military announced the implementation of joint naval and air exercises, and we are closely monitoring their activities at all times. Such actions by the Chinese side have fully reflected its disruption of peace and stability in this region, clearly making it a troublemaker.
The Chinese said its military exercise would close in on Taiwan Island from multiple directions and aimed to be a strong deterrence.
The ruling party stubbornly adheres to a separatist stance and attempts to seek so-called Taiwan independence by relying on external forces. These efforts are doomed to fail, like a praying mantis trying to stop a chariot.
Taiwan's defence ministry labelled the drills grey zone harassment and propaganda to intimidate the country. It said it's unclear when the military exercise will end, but said no Chinese ships had entered a buffer zone off the island's coast.
Rory Daniels is the Managing Director of the Asia Society Policy Institute and an Asia security specialist, and she's joining us now from New York. Welcome to you, Rory. What do you make of these surprise military drills by China? Is it just bluster, or should we all be taking this more seriously?
I think that the Chinese are trying very hard to send a signal to both Taiwan and the United States that they see recent moves that the U.S. and Taiwan have been making as relatively escalatory. So I think this is very much in response to Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's trip to the region, where he mentioned the scenario of an invasion of Taiwan as a particularly salient threat and a reason to bolster U.S. allies in the Indo-Pacific. It is also, I think, from the Chinese perspective, in response to recent comments that Taiwan President William Lai made, calling China a hostile foreign force. So when China sees these two things happening around the same time and believes perhaps the U.S. and Taiwan are acting in concert, it does want to send signals of what it calls deterrence. But it's important to remember that from both the U.S. and Taiwan perspective, these signals are seen as escalatory, and these drills are seen as threatening. They are both a political signal from the Chinese, as you can see in the slick videos that the Chinese PLA has produced and put out, and they are also real practice for a potential invasion.
So what effect are these drills, these threats having? Are they intimidating the Taiwanese government to the extent that it might actually back down?
It's very difficult to say whether or not the Taiwan government feels it should double down on some of the rhetorical devices that it's been using to describe the cross-strait relationship, or whether it wants to de-escalate. I think that all military signals can be misinterpreted or overinterpreted, and there's a real threat here to Taiwan's homeland. So it's very difficult to calibrate a response to these types of drills, but simply to look at the trend over a long period of time, it does not seem that Taipei and Beijing are any closer to de-escalating or coming to some sort of modus operandi that would de-escalate tensions in and around the Taiwan Strait. So the long-term trends suggest that there will be really no change in the cross-strait relationship, that President Lai will continue to be vocal about the threat that he sees emanating from Beijing, that Beijing will continue to take that as a sign and a symbol that Taiwan is moving toward greater independence, and that the U.S. will look at the situation in cross-strait relations and in the Indo-Pacific as one where China is escalating. So it doesn't seem to me that this is very much a continuation of the current trends and dynamics, and it doesn't seem to me that there will be a turnaround.
Speaking of the US, Taiwan, along with, of course, many other countries, is coming to terms with the changing geopolitical priorities of Donald Trump's second term. Can Taiwan still completely count on the US as an ally?
I think Taiwan can definitely count on the U.S. We're not formal allies, but it certainly can count on U.S. law, the Taiwan Relations Act, which says that the U.S. wants to see the issue of Taiwan's sovereignty resolved without the use of force or coercion, and it will continue to supply Taiwan with arms of a defensive nature in order to keep a military balance across the strait. I think it's also important for Taiwan to remember that the U.S. does not want to be unnecessarily drawn into any conflict, and that the Trump administration in particular sees the U.S. military power as primarily reserved for homeland defense. Right. So it's very important that Taiwan doesn't overstep in this regard.
We'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much to you, Rory Daniels, Managing Director of the Asia Society Policy Institute. Many thanks.
My pleasure.